What's up, YouTube? It's CS back here with another installment, and here is my prediction for episode 25 of Deadliest Warrior between the US Army Rangers and the North Korean Special Operation Forces. Alright, now before I get analytical on this Deadliest Warrior shit, first off, a huge shout out goes to one of the experts on the US Army Rangers side, and that's Tim Kennedy. He has a big fight today at the Strike Force Fedor versus Henderson card. Really can't wait for that fight. You guys can find my picks in a link that I'll leave somewhere on the screen, so go check that out. But yeah, Tim Kennedy is a U.S. Army Ranger, and he's testing for the U.S. Army Rangers this episode. So he has a big weekend with that fight and a big week with that Deadliest Warrior episode coming next week that I'm about to look at. So if you guys are going for the U.S. Army Rangers, if you guys are already Tim Kennedy fans, go wish him some luck. I'll leave a link to his Twitter in the description below. But yeah, let's take a look at this episode now. Like Mack said, this is probably the most relevant Deadliest Warrior matchup to date. Like, this shit could actually go down. You got U.S. Army Rangers who would be leading a fight against the North Korean Special Operation Forces if this shit were to break loose. Because the U.S. Army Rangers, they're first on the front lines every time. We've whipped them out first in Iraq, Afghanistan, Omaha back in the day, and possibly Korea if it were to go down. So just saying, they must be that darn good if, they're to be the first on the front lines. Of course, North Korean Special Operation Forces, what can I say? They're the best that Korea has to offer. We can't take Korea lightly. Them North Koreans are crazy, They're extremists. You saw the videos. So just saying, they must be good. I have a feeling, like usual though, that the X factors won't really matter because I think they'll cancel each other out. This will be determined by marksmanship. So whoever dominates at either mid and long range will win this matchup. But speaking of long range, let's take a look at those weapons. On one side, you have U.S. Army Rangers with their SR-25, and on the other side, you have the North Korean Special Operation Forces and their PSL. Now, the PSL is basically a Romanian upgrade of the Dragunov. And we saw the Dragunov in the Spetsnaz episode. It was very accurate. It was a tad off the target compared to the Remington, I believe, that the Green Berets were shooting. And, because of that, it resulted in one less kill at the end of the day. And I believe the edge did go to the Americans there as well. Now, it was also tested against the IRA where it completely wrecked the IRA's sniper rifle. I can't remember what they were using. But, it's a very good gun, the Dragunov, and the PSL should be just as good. Problem though, it only has a 10-round magazine. I think that the SR-25's 20-round magazine, with Tim Kennedy doing his confirmation kills in the first 14 minutes of the episode, you guys should check that out on spike.com. He was putting extra bullets in some of those dummies. And, that's huge because, not only can he afford to do that and make confirmation kills, if he does miss, he has another shot to use at you. Where if you're a sniper, you're trying to take out like 6-7 dudes, you miss more than once, like 3 or 4 times, like, you're screwed. So what can I say? I like the extra 10 rounds in the magazine for the SR-25, and I like the way Tim Kennedy shot that shit in the first 14 minutes of the episode. I think it's very hard for the PSL to top that, and whoever's using it on the Korean side, I believe it's Charles that's using it. So I just think it's highly unlikely he, outshoots Tim and gets the edge there. I gotta go with the SR-25, and I like that extra 10 rounds in the magazine. So that's my pick for the edge. I believe the SR-25 will be the third weapon in a row that went first and gets the edge. So edge goes to the SR-25 and U.S. Army Rangers. Moving on, we have the mid-range weapons to look at. We have an M4 variant most likely on the side of the U.S. Army Rangers, and then we either have an AK or a Type 56 rifle on the Korean side. Now, I believe they will test the Type 56 because I believe, it's the more prominent gun as of right now. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys should, help me out on that. But I did see AKs and Type 56s on the show on the first 14 minutes of the episode. I saw the one guy holding an AK, then I saw a Type 56 in the back. I really don't know what they're going to use, but I know the Type 56 is basically a Chinese copy of the AK. You know, it looks kind of different, but it looks pretty reminiscent of the AK, and I would assume that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be, you know, a simple firearm, but, you know, it's durable, it's still deadly. You know, I believe it's going to get outshot though, just because you have the M4, which is, you know, more of an assault rifle, and then you have the AK, which is an assault rifle, but to me it's more of a machine gun. You see whoever uses it, you know, for example, like the Taliban or the Russians back in the day, they preferred to spray fire. And I believe in a 5-on-5 format, I believe the better point and shoot weapon would be the M4. It's proved that time in and time again on this show. You saw the M4 Cold Commando on the side of the Navy SEALs, that outshot the Galil of the Israelis, and you saw the M4A1 of the Green Berets outshoot the AK-74 of the Spetsnaz. So I believe that test in the end is going to look somewhat reminiscent of that one. So I believe the Type 56 will pile up a lot of kills, but I just believe it will get, you know, edged by the M4, whatever M4 the U.S. Army Rangers are having. M4s are pretty much, you know, undefeated on Deadliest Warrior, and I believe they're going to stay that way after this edge. So my edge goes to the M4 of the U.S. Army Rangers. Now, YouTube, moving on, we have explosive weapons to look at. Of course, they are testing them. They did mention them in the first 14 minutes of the episode on Spike. I hope you guys checked that out already. But we don't know what they are. Of course, the M18 is listed on Wikipedia for the American side, but as for the Koreans, their explosive weapon is unlisted right now. So I'm not going to take a look at that. I can't exactly give the M18 Claymore the edge just because I don't know what the Koreans are going to have on their side. Now, they also have short-range defense systems. You guys saw that in the first 14 minutes as well. You know, that they should be pretty much evenly matched there. Whoever they give the edge to, if they do give an edge, won't put a big dent in the sim just because of the fact that, you know, it's a modern matchup. This shit's going to be determined on how well they use their mid and long range weaponry again. So don't look for that to be such a factor in the sim, but expect it to be portrayed in the visual sim. So that's going to be cool to watch. And yeah, I guess that's about it for explosives and short range weaponry. But now let's consider the X factors. A huge one that they mentioned is the fact that if this were to go down, it would go down in the Korean Peninsula. So that's where the battle is going to take place. I like how they told us where the battle is going to take place. Really appreciate that. That's going to heavily favor the Koreans, although the Army Rangers, you know, can pretty much adapt to anywhere they go. But holy crap, that should be like a 90-80 in the X factor numbers out of 100, because holy crap, the Koreans, you know, they pretty much know how to fight there. That's their backyard, you know. How can you go against them there? So they're going to get the edge there if, you know, home field advantage is one of the X factors, which they mentioned it is. Also, they probably won't take a look at things like, you know, intuition or generalship, because these aren't single leaders, you know. George Washington, generalship was looked at because, you know, he's a leader along with Napoleon, and of course intuition was looked at for Joan of Arc because, you know, that's her shit. But I don't know what they'll look at as far as a modern match is concerned. But not only a modern match with class versus class, not, you know, figurehead versus figurehead. So if you guys want to enlighten me on what X factors you think you might see, then please tell me. So I think eventually, when we do see the results, the X factors will be relatively even, because, you know, they're pretty evenly matched in terms of character, I think. But then again, whoever wins the more crucial X factors leading to them winning, you know, the more crucial battles with the mid and long range weaponry, that person will win. And I believe, again, the superior marksman will win in the U.S. Army Rangers. I did give them 2 edges in the mid and long range. I just think they're superior in those areas. I think the thing that Korea has going for them is the fact that, you know, they're on the Korean Peninsula. I know it's not the most friendly environment. Maybe the AK or Type 56 they use might favor them in a durability test, which we might see. But in the end, I think that you're going to have to go with the more friendlier 5-on-5 gun. I believe that is the M4. And I believe it's a game changer in this fight. So that's my pick. U.S. Army Rangers. I believe they'll win close, though. And maybe 55% tops. So that is my pick. U.S. Army Rangers against the North Korean Special Operation Forces. So YouTube, that about does it for my pick for this episode 25, Deadliest Warrior. Hope you guys enjoyed my breakdown or preview of this episode. I really don't have a lot to talk about. I'm considering doing predictions due to the fact that, they're not giving us much on the Deadliest Warrior site. I guess that's a good thing though, due to the fact that we used to see the weapons and we'd look up the specs of the weapons and be like, okay, that guy's winning. It was really easy to tell to see who's winning. You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing really shocked anyone last season, I think. Someone with a sling versus someone with a bow, who do you think's winning that? Also, another one, like someone with a siege weapon, like the Scorpion, versus someone without one, like, the Rajput. That was easy to tell too, you know what I'm saying? So, now if you take a look at a modern matchup and see who would win, M4 versus Galileo. Higher rate of fire, higher muzzle velocity. The dude with the M4 probably wins that. You know what I'm saying? That was it was the Navy SEALs. So I'm just saying, kind of easy to tell who wins. So might as well do this, first 12, 14 minutes of the episode. I don't mind it. So whatever. It's such a tease, but what can I say? I'm happy to get to watch something instead of read a blog and make an easy prediction, as much as that might make someone on the net like myself look good. Just saying. But yeah, tell me who you think is winning this episode. Give me a thumbs up if you're voting for the U.S. Army Rangers, and give me a thumbs down if you're voting for North Korean Special Operations Forces, so I have a better idea of who you guys think is going to win. And then also leave me a comment like usual telling me why you're picking them. Also, subscribe if you haven't already. Be really nice of you, and please follow me on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter. I recently got Google Plus, so hit me up there if you feel like it. But yeah, that about does it. Links are in the description below. Also hit Tim Kennedy up, fellow U.S. Army Ranger. And yeah, that about does it. So I'll see you for a review next week, and take care.